Hello, I'm Jerry Ford. Welcome to Jungle Jerry's Treehouse. I'm going to continue on with part 2 of Magic Treehouse number 31, A Merlin Mission, Summer of the Sea Serpent by Mary Pope Osborne. Alright, so we left off at chapter 4, Web Walk. I think they're right now inside that cave, and they just saw the Spider Queen. Jack grabbed Annie's hand. "Whatever you do, don't look up," he said. Annie looked up. "Ah!" she screamed. She started to leap off the ledge into the churning waters, but then another wave crashed wildly against the walls. Jack held Annie back. "Don't jump," he shouted. "You'll drown." Above the sound of the rushing waters, a loud whisper echoed around the cave. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The Spider Queen was staring down at them with her 8 red eyes. As Jack and Annie stared back in horror, the giant spider shot a web strand as thick as a rope straight toward them. Jack and Annie ducked. The strand stuck to the wall. "What's she doing?" cried Annie. "I don't know," said Jack. He and Annie looked back up at the Spider Queen. She'd crawled a few feet closer to the crack on the wall. She stared down at them for a moment with her glowing eyes, then shot out another thick rope strand. "Watch out!" shouted Jack. He and Annie ducked. Thwack! The second web rope stuck to the ledge, just a few feet away from the first. "Oh no, look!" shrieked Annie. She pointed up at the cave ceiling. The monster spider was zigzagging between the 2 strands of her web. She was heading straight toward them. Jack and Annie screamed and pressed themselves against the wall. "We have to leave!" cried Annie. But before they could make a move, another wave crashed into the cave. The water swirled with ferocious force around the chamber. "We can't leave!" cried Jack. "We can't stay!" cried Annie. Wait, whispered... No, wait a minute. Wait, whispered the Spider Queen. The giant spider kept zigzagging between the 2 lines, spinning more web, coming closer and closer and closer to Jack and Annie. They watched in horror, unable to speak or move, but just when she came close enough to touch them, the Spider Queen turned and scurried back up to the ceiling, leaving a giant web ladder behind her. She's helping them. That's all she wanted to do. The Spider Queen stared down at Jack and Annie with her 8 red eyes. "Climb, climb, climb," she whispered from her spot on the ceiling. "I think she wants to help us," said Jack. "No, she wants to trap us," said Annie. The spider whispered again. "Climb, climb, climb." Something about her voice made Jack feel certain the Spider Queen wanted to help. "She doesn't want to hurt us," he said. "She wants to help us escape. Besides, we don't have any choice." The water was rising higher and higher over their ledge. It was swirling above their ankles now. "We have to climb her web," said Jack. "I'll go first." He reached up and grabbed one of the spider ropes. It felt damp and sticky. He pulled himself onto the bottom strands of the web ladder. "Grab on," he shouted to Annie above the roar of the water. "We have to get to that crack in the ceiling." Annie grabbed one of the web ropes. "Ooh," she said, "it's gross." "Just climb," said Jack. Holding tightly to the sticky strands, Jack and Annie began making their way up the Spider Queen's web ladder. The web swayed and stretched, but it was sturdy enough to hold their weight. Its stickiness kept them from slipping and falling. Crawling and climbing, they moved higher and higher above the crashing waters. As they drew near the crack in the ceiling, Jack kept his eyes on the Spider Queen. She was watching them carefully. Finally, Jack reached the ceiling crack. He swung to one side of the web ladder, putting himself between Annie and the giant spider. "You go first," he said. Okay, said Annie. She grabbed the rocky edge of the opening and stuck her head out of the crack. There's nowhere to go but into the water, she called. She grabbed the rocky edge of the opening and stuck her head out of the crack. There's nowhere to go but into the water, she called. Who's saying that, Annie? How far down is it? Said Jack. Pretty far, said Annie, but I think we can make it. Wait, said Jack, but Annie was already squeezing herself through the crack. Annie, be careful, said Jack. Splash! Oh, man, said Jack. He gripped the edge of the crack. Then he glanced back at the Spider Queen. Her glowing red eyes peered out at him from the shadows. Go, 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 she whispered. Jack smiled at her. Thanks, he said. Go, the Spider Queen whispered again. Jack pulled himself out of the darkness onto a narrow rocky ledge. The bright sun sparkled on the blue water of the small cove below. Come on, Annie shouted. She was bobbing up and down on the gentle waves. Jack took off his glasses. He pinched his nose and closed his eyes. Then he jumped off the ledge. Chapter 5. Bar. Jack splashed into the blue sunlit sea. He sank to the bottom and then bobbed back up. He coughed and pushed his hair out of his eyes. Annie was treading water nearby. Hey, she called. Hey, Jack sputtered. I was wrong. You were right, Annie said. She sounded thrilled. The Spider Queen just wanted to help us. Yeah, said Jack. He shook the seawater off his glasses and put them back on. She must be really lonely, said Annie. She probably feels like she has to hide in that cave because she's so scary looking. Maybe, said Jack. He looked around the second cove. Purple shadows stretched over a rocky seashore beneath the cliffs. The sun had moved farther across the sky. We'd better hurry, said Jack. What do we do now? Read the rhyme, said Annie. Jack pulled the shell out of his pocket. Treading water, he read the next line in Merlin's poem. And swim with the selkie, clothed in green. What's a selkie? Said Annie. Who knows, said Jack. He looked at the cliffs and the shore. Is a selkie a fish? A person? What? He wondered. Excuse me. Then Jack saw two dark shapes speeding. Oh, gosh, excuse me. Speeding like fat torpedoes below the surface of the water. They were coming straight toward him and Annie. Watch out, Jack shouted. Yikes, Annie yelled. Jack and Annie swam out of the way as the creatures moved swiftly past them. Suddenly, two sleek gray heads popped above the surface. They had wide snouts and long white whiskers. They had tiny wrinkly ears and big dark eyes. Seals, cried Annie. The two seals turned their heads like periscopes. When they saw Jack and Annie, they opened their mouths, showing their small pointed teeth. They seemed to be smiling. Oh, gosh, excuse me. Hi, guys, said Annie. Bar, bar. Bar, bar. How do you think they sounded? The seals barked. Then they rolled through the water and bumped Jack and Annie with their noses. They barked again, joyfully, then darted toward the shore. Come on, cried Annie. Let's play with them. We don't have time to play, said Jack, but Annie had already started after the seals, swimming toward the rocky beach. Annie, stop, called Jack. We have to hurry and find the selkie and the sword of the light before nightfall, or King Arthur will meet his doom. Jack's voice trailed off. Annie didn't hear him. She and the two seals had reached the shore and were getting out of the water. The seals clumsily... Oh, man. Excuse me. The seals clumsily hauled their chubby bodies onto a big rock and flopped down. Annie climbed onto the rock, too. Annie, come on, shouted Jack. It could be as late as 4 o'clock now, he thought, and there was still a lot they had to do before nightfall. Let's rest for a minute, Annie called. She sat near the seals and patted their shiny heads as if they were big dogs. The seals barked. Actually, Jack wanted to rest too. He felt really tired. Maybe we could rest for a minute on the rock with the seals, he thought, then search for the Selkie. Well, okay, he shouted, but just for a quick minute. Jack headed for the shore. By the time he dragged himself out of the water, the seals were lying on their backs with their eyes closed. Their white whiskers twitched as they slept in the warm sunlight. Shh, they're napping, said Annie. She lay down beside the seals, and closed her eyes too. The sun feels really good, Jack. Come on. Lie down with us for a second. Oh, brother, Jack muttered. But the afternoon sunlight did feel good. He climbed onto the warm rock and lay down next to Annie and the seals. Okay, just for a quick second, he said. Jack closed his eyes. The sunshine felt good on his tired arms and legs. The gentle sea breeze felt especially clean and fresh after the cave of the Spider Queen. The next thing he knew, he had faded into a deep, peaceful sleep. Uh-oh. Chapter 6. The Selkie. Let's see. Wake up, lazy bones. You can't sleep all afternoon, said a friendly voice. Jack's eyes shot open. Oh no, he thought. What time is it? He sat up and looked around. The seals were gone. Standing over Jack and Annie was a barefoot boy with a happy, freckled face. Teddy, said Jack. For a moment he forgot all about the time. Teddy, Teddy, cried Annie. She leaped up and hugged the young sorcerer. Teddy grinned from ear to ear. He was wearing a brown tunic. His red hair was damp. You're finally here, said Jack, laughing. Oh, goodness. I have been here for some time, said Teddy. Merlin sent me early this morning. I was waiting for you on the beach when Kathleen came along and invited me to go for a swim with her. Teddy turned to a girl standing a little farther down the beach. Like Teddy, she looked to be about 13. Kathleen, he called, come meet my friends. There's Kathleen. The girl smiled and began walking over the rocks toward Jack, Annie, and Teddy. She wore a green dress that looked as if it had been woven from grass. Her hair fell in black ringlets down to her waist like a dark waterfall. These are my good friends Jack and Annie, Teddy said to the girl. They come from a faraway land. Hello, Jack and Annie, the girl said in a bold, friendly voice. I am very happy to meet you. My name is Kathleen. As she spoke, Kathleen's large eyes sparkled with the blue of the sky and water. Jack couldn't speak. Kathleen was the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen. I like your dress, said Annie. Kathleen laughed. I wove it from seagrass, she said. I am not a very good weaver. I am sad to say. Do you live here? Asked Annie. I do, said Kathleen, with my 19 sisters. 19 sisters, said Annie. Yes, said Kathleen, tossing back her long curls. I am the youngest of us all. We live in a cave up in the cliffs. Cool, said Annie. Is your cave like the cave of the Spider Queen? No, said Kathleen. It is much more cheerful than Morig's cave. So that's her name, said Annie. I'm worried that she might be lonely. Do not worry, said Kathleen. Morig has many friends, bats, crabs, starfish, but it is kind of you to be concerned about her. She smiled at Annie. Kathleen's friendly manner finally gave Jack the courage to speak. He cleared his throat. The water night was really cool, too, he said. The water night? Said Kathleen. Yeah, he said. "The guy who carried us across the first cove." Kathleen looked puzzled. "His horse had a fish's tail," said Annie. "How strange," said Kathleen. "I often swim in that cove, but I've never seen or heard of such a night." "Have you lived here for a long time?" asked Annie. "Always," said Kathleen. "Kathleen is a Selkie," said Teddy. "A Selkie?" said Jack and Annie together. "Yes," said Kathleen, laughing. "You're in Merlin's rhyme," said Annie. "It says, 'Swim with a Selkie clothed in green.'" "Merlin's rhyme?" asked Teddy. "Merlin gave us a rhyme to help us find the Sword of Light," said Jack. The smile left Kathleen's face. Her beautiful eyes darkened. "You have come in search of the Sword of Light?" she said. "Oh dear." "What's wrong?" said Jack. "Many have passed through here seeking the Sword of Light," said Kathleen, "but as soon as anyone enters the cove beyond the jellyfish cave, terrible winter storms seem to burst out of nowhere. Even in summer, the storms have icy winds and rain. No seekers of the sword have ever survived these gales." "Have you ever been to the cove beyond the jellyfish cave?" asked Jack. Kathleen shook her head. "My older sisters have always forbidden me to go there," she said. "In fact, no Selkie has ever dared swim into the Cove of the Stormy Coast." "Cove of the Stormy Coast?" said Annie. "That's the next line in Merlin's rhyme. Enter the Cove of the Stormy Coast." "What is Merlin's rhyme?" asked Teddy. "Here," said Jack. "Look." He handed the seashell to Teddy. The boy sorcerer quickly read Merlin's message in rhyme. Then he looked at the sky. "The sun moves on," he said. "Let us make haste. We must find the sword before nightfall, or someday Arthur will meet his doom." "Wait a minute," said Annie. She looked at Kathleen. "The rhyme says we're supposed to swim with you. Will you come with us?" Kathleen looked at them for a long moment. Then she stood up and tossed back her curls. Her eyes were bright. "I have always wanted to explore that cove," she said. "Hurry," said Teddy. "You will be the first Selkie to do so. A grand adventure awaits us all. Onward!" "Hold on," said Jack. "What about that jellyfish cave?" "You need not worry about the jellyfish," said Kathleen. "They cannot harm us." "They cannot?" said Jack. "No," said the Selkie. "Not if we all change into seals." Let's see. Let's see. We might be able to get one more chapter in. Chapter 7 is called Cove of the Stormy Coast. "Seals?" asked Annie. Jack looked at Teddy. "Did she say change into seals?" he asked. "Indeed," said Teddy. "That's what Selkies do. They are people on land and seals in the sea." "You're a seal?" Jack asked Kathleen. "Sometimes," said the Selkie, smiling. Jack just stared at her. He couldn't believe the beautiful girl was sometimes a seal. "Whenever I come ashore and dry off in the sun, my seal skin falls away," said Kathleen. "Then I am as human as I am right now." "Oh, I get it," said Annie. "You were one of the seals we met in the water." "Of course," said Kathleen, "and Teddy was the other." Jack looked at Teddy. You? He stammered. "How?" Teddy grinned. "I am a magician, remember?" he said. Kathleen laughed. "Yes, but this time 'twas my magic that did the work," she said. She pointed to 2 shiny gray skins lying on the sand. "I gave him a seal skin and spoke a Selkie spell." "You turned Teddy into a seal?" asked Jack. "Aye," said Kathleen, "and I shall do the same for you. I am sure my sisters will not mind if we borrow 2 more of their skins." The Selkie started toward a large pile of rocks. Teddy watched Kathleen go, then looked back at Jack and Annie. She has powerful magic indeed," he said. "No kidding," said Annie. Jack was speechless. He couldn't believe he and Annie were about to become seals. Kathleen came out from behind the rocks, carrying 2 shiny skins. "Take these," she said, handing them to Jack and Annie. The skins looked like scuba divers' wetsuits with hoods. "Pull them on over your clothes," said Kathleen, "like this." She and Teddy picked up their own seal skins from the sand and began pulling them on. Jack and Annie did the same. Jack stretched the skin up over his legs and shorts, then over his arms and t-shirt. He felt as if he were wearing a thick layer of rubber. Before we cover our heads and faces, we must wade into the water, said Kathleen. Follow me. Jack waded clumsily into the water with the others. This is crazy, he thought. You can't become a seal just by putting on a seal costume. Kathleen stopped them when they were waist deep. Slip on your hood, she said. I will say a few words in sulky language, then we shall all dive in. Teddy grinned at Jack and Annie. We have flown together through the sky, he said. Now we shall swim together in the deep, eh? Jack nodded, but he still didn't believe this could possibly work. Quickly, said Kathleen. Cover your heads and faces. Dive as soon as I've spoken the spell. Jack pulled on his hood. He stretched it down over his forehead, then over his face, his glasses, nose, and chin. He couldn't see or talk. He wanted to rip the hood off, but Kathleen's voice stopped him. Enka da tro ademi, ba mi hu no ne ha ni. That's what she's saying. Jack heard one splash, then two more. He quickly dove into the sea. As soon as the seawater covered his head and body, Jack felt the sealskin melt into his own. His chest expanded to the size of a barrel. His arms and legs vanished, and the flippers took their place. Jack shot through the water like a torpedo. When he moved his front flippers, he turned right or left. When he moved his back flippers, he zoomed forward. Jack rolled and swerved in and out of schools of fish and jungles of seagrass. He dove down to the murky depths of the cove. Then he shot back up to the surface. In his smooth seal body, he could swim 10 times faster than he ever had in his human body, and he could see and hear perfectly. Jack rose and fell through the deep. 2 seals appeared beside him. Bubbles came up from their mouths. They made gurgling and clicking sounds. Jack could understand exactly what their seal sounds meant. Hey, Jack, it's me. 'Tis me, too. Hi, guys, Jack called to Annie and Teddy. He heard trilling sounds on his other side. He saw a 3rd seal. It was Kathleen, swimming gracefully toward him. Hello, Jack. Hello, Kathleen. Jack clicked back to her. He wanted to tell the Selkie how much fun he was having, but when he opened his mouth, a school of tiny fish swam down his throat. Before he knew it, Jack had swallowed all the fish whole, but he didn't mind. He laughed a seal laugh full of bubbles. Onward, Kathleen, clicked Teddy. Lead us to the jellyfish cave. All right, we'll end it there. Chapter 8, it's called Cloak of the Old Gray Ghost. Here's the next picture there. See the jellyfish up here, and then here's Teddy, Kathleen, Jack, and Annie turned into seals. All right. Well, we'll continue on there next time. Put this bookmark in there. I thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we will see you on the next one.